Happy New Year, everybody. It's a new year in the church. We're starting a new liturgical year. And so we go from the Gospel of Mark that we've been covering for the last year into the Gospel of Luke. And so Happy New Year. So as we approach this time of Advent, I want to talk about trees, all different kinds of trees. I want to talk about Christmas trees and fig trees and mesquite trees. Yes, even stumps, old stumps. And then also, I want to talk about Advent and the meaning of peace because we lit the candle of peace today in our Advent candle wreath. And so I want to talk about peace. Now, peace is not just the absence of war or the absence of conflict. Peace is actually something much, much different. It's deeper. If you've ever gotten an email from me, I sign my emails Peace, Pastor John. And I joke with my friends that, and then that's the peace of Christ. That's not that hippie peace, which is taken from King of the Hill, which is a cartoon. But even though I do kind of look like a hippie, I am trying to convey that idea of the peace of Christ, which is a deeper peace than just absence of conflict. It's about shalom. It's about thriving. It's about being able to get all the nourishment that you need and to live in solitude and solidarity and just to have everything that you need in community and with yourself. It's about thriving. That's what the translation I like best. It's about thriving and flourishing. And so when we say peace, we're talking about flourishing in Christ or the flourishing of Christ. And so as we enter into this Christmas season, it's often very, very stressful, and people start getting all worked up about all the different things they need to do. And especially with the pandemic, we've been, separated and sitting away from our usual traditions, and people are anxious to get back to that. And it's very very tempting just to sort of jump right back into it and start doing the tasks of Christmas rather than fully living into the meaning of Christmas. And so in our scriptures today, there are a lot of little signs, there are little signals that we are told and we're asked to watch. And so today, like I said, we're going to talk about stumps and fig trees and Christmas trees and mesquites and all of the little signs that we need to be on the lookout for. So we hear Advent, we hear a time of preparing, a time of waiting. I also like to add a time of resting because that's part of preparation. We get all caught up in everything and we get stressed out. And so I want to talk about the sign of the Christmas tree. And so the sign of the Christmas tree isn't that, oh, Christmas trees are evergreens and it's about persistence and life in the midst of winter. Yeah, that is very important to remember about Christmas trees. But the sign Christmas tree I want to talk about is when you are in a store in August and you see maybe back to school ending, and then you see Halloween sort of tucked away. And then if you look way up, you'll see the side of the Christmas tree. That is the Christmas trees that are tucked away on the top shelf waiting to come down. Whenever I would see those, I would be like, oh my goodness, Christmas is around the corner. And so that would cause me stress. I came from a, a it's not a tradition. I imposed upon myself that Christmas had to be perfect. And so it had to be all about the right decorations and the right kind of food, and all of the preparations needed to be in the right place at the right time. And I remember one Christmas Eve, we were getting ready to go to church. My wife had to work that evening because she's a nurse. And I had my mom over for dinner. We had our daughter, who was maybe about 2 years old, and we were getting ready for Christmas. And for me, not all the decorations were up, and I still had to put the lights up, and I became preoccupied with it. And so there it was, Christmas Eve around 5:30 at night, and here I am trying to put the lights up outside, and the lights are not lighting, and I am getting more and more angry, and I'm yelling and I'm cursing, and it's just causing stress and turmoil. My poor daughter is crying, and my mom's like yelling out to me, like, forget about it, just come in and don't worry about it. But I was so focused on the trappings and trimmings of Christmas and the perfect Christmas. Now, it did all work out, and it turned out to be a very lovely Christmas. But for a moment, I was just so stressed out trying to make everything perfect and fit the way this sort of commercialized Christmas was sold to me. And that you just have to have all the right products and Christmas will go, and that causes a lot of stress rather than just being in the moment of Christmas and entering into that nourishing place, that place of thriving, of shalom, of peace. And so don't let the sign of the Christmas tree drive you into a stressful place. Yes, live into the meaning of the Christmas tree, which is ever present, always green, always with us. But don't worry about all the trappings. Now, like I said, in the book of Jeremiah, he's talking about stumps and family trees. And he's talking about the stump of Jesse, or the stump of the David tree. And so um, back in the time that Jeremiah was writing, the people of God in Israel, and they split into two groups. They split into the kingdom of Judah, and they split into the kingdom of Israel. And these are both direct descendants of David. And because of their bickering and squabbling and accusations and saying one side is this way and the other side is that way, and it tore the kingdom apart. And in their squabbling and bickering and trying to outdo the other side in a quest for power, they didn't see Assyrians and Babylonians coming, and everything fell apart. Jeremiah is saying, you know what? You messed up. You forgot to look after those widows, those orphans, and the strangers, and you paid a price. But you know what? You're getting a second chance. And that old stump of Jesse, of King David, it isn't dead. It's alive. And you need to be keeping your eye out for that new shoot that's coming out. And so don't count God out, because God has been with you this whole time. And there is a greenness, a readiness waiting if you just keep your eyes open and if you are awake. And so it's about being prepared. It's about keeping your eyes open. Most importantly, being awake. Being awake. I cannot stress that any stronger, that being awake is so important. So we go into the book of Luke for this Advent season. And, I love the book of Luke because it's so rich. It's about marginalized people, it's about Gentiles and women and outsiders and their wonderful experiences, has very rich narratives. It talks about the birth of John the Baptist, the birth of Jesus that we're familiar with at the Christmas story, angels, encounters, all of it is so rich. And then Advent starts with this really scary scripture about the sun and the moon and the stars and the seas all turbulent and crashing, and people being scared and running to and fro and not knowing what to do because the world is falling apart. Like, wow, Merry Christmas, everyone. Well, in chapter 21, it's actually very appropriate for Advent, and it's appropriate for our time now because what we have is chaos. Okay, so when we look at rushing, turbulent water, that's about chaos, chaos in life. And then he talks about the sun and the moon and the stars. And if we remember back to Genesis, when God puts the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky, and it's before the presence of light, which for us is kind of funny because scientifically, we know that light and the stars and the sun and moon, they all deal with reflective light and coming from there. Much of our understanding of light comes from the sun, but what they're doing is they're separating it out, and the sun and the moon and the stars are put there as signs in order to tell time and to see the signs. That's what God is putting. And so when Jesus is talking about all of this, he's talking about chaos and turmoil and to keep your eye on the signs that are coming, that are present here and now. Because in the clouds, here comes Christ, here comes the Son of Man coming in the clouds, and that people shouldn't be scared. Well, the clouds usually obscure things, clouds hide things, but here the clouds are revealing things to people who are awake and keeping their eyes open, who are looking at all these signs. So just like us, in the midst of all of this turmoil and all of this, um, the pandemics, the political fighting and bickering that goes back and forth, the manipulations, the political games, social unrest, social injustice, all of these things make us scared, make us anxious. Sometimes we cry out, like, where is God? If we keep our eye out and we look, if we are aware, if we are awake, we can see Christ is present here and now. This is a paradox of Advent. Paradox of Advent is that we're waiting on Emmanuel. We sing, O come, Emmanuel. But Emmanuel is God with us, present here and now. And so as people of God, we know that God is with us. We know that Christ is present. Oftentimes in my prayer groups, I part of my prayer is that may we be Christ to others, and more importantly, may we see Christ in others. Be Christ, see Christ. And it's all around us. Christ is all around us. God is present everywhere. We just need to be wise and keep our eye out. So this is where Jesus starts talking about the fig, because when you see the fig tree or any other tree and you see the little buds coming, and then you see it want to unwind, summer is around the corner. And that's true with all trees. Now, here in the desert, we have mesquite trees. And one thing I've noticed with mesquite trees is they are very wise, because mesquite trees are never fooled by false warm spells. Because here, what happens is we'll go through a cold winter, and then all of a sudden it starts warming up. We get a little warm front. And all the trees start saying, oh, summer is coming, and they start budding. And then all of a sudden, the next week, boom, there's another cold snap. And all their poor buds freeze. And some of them, unfortunately, the ones that aren't native here, die, but the ones that were sending out their buds are like, nope, I'm going to hold it back. Mesquite trees never do that. Mesquite trees, I've noticed, always wait until it's really going to be warm. And so I know that when I see the mesquite tree putting out its leaves, that the summer is coming. And if you haven't been to Arizona in the summer, our summers can be brutal. So the mesquite tree knows when and where and how to do it. And so that is one of the subtle signs here that we're able to look at. So this story in Luke lends itself to sort of a prophetic message, and a lot of people interpret it, well, this is the future. This is what's going to happen at the end of the world, at the apocalypse. Everything's going to be in turmoil in the seas, and tsunamis, and tidal waves, and meteorites, and meteors, and the sun blacked out, and all this horrible stuff. And then, boom, you'll see Jesus in a big cloud coming down, zapping people left and right with laser beams. Um, it's not about that. Yes, it's prophetic, but prophetic words and prophetic writing has to deal with here and now, has to do with the moment. And that's what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about the chaos and turmoil of the world that they live in. And it's the chaos and turmoil of the world that we all live in. Each generation has had to deal with their own sun and moon and stars falling, and the sea raging, and people rushing to and fro in wars. Every generation. And the message for every generation is Emmanuel, God is with you. Christ is there in the clouds. Christ is present. You only need to open your eyes, look up, and be awake. Be awake. And don't get caught up in all of the games. Don't get caught up in all of the anger and mistrust and quest for power. But be awake. Care for one another. And so this Advent, I'm asking you to fully live into the promise of Emmanuel, that paradox of Advent, where we are waiting on Emmanuel, but Emmanuel's here the whole time. God is with us the whole time. And so live into shalom, live into peace, flourish this Advent. If something dealing with the holidays is affirming to you, do it. If something is distracting, don't do it. And refine your Advent. Live in relationship. One of the best Christmases I ever had was another Christmas where there was turmoil and all sorts of chaos, and I had to preach on the Sunday after Christmas, which, well, actually, it was Christmas Day. It was Christmas morning fell on Sunday. So we had Christmas Eve, and then I had to preach by myself on Christmas morning. And that Christmas Eve, my son came in and said, uh, Dad, there's a gurgling in the backyard. And I was in such a place that, you know what, I can't deal with this. I have to preach tomorrow. I'm going to bed. And so, in the midst of all the holiday preparations, my wife and my son dealt with the gurgling in the backyard, which turned out to be a broken water main. And they called somebody, and they got it turned off and set, and the water of the house was turned off. We had to cancel all of our plans for Christmas. But that's where I learned the wonders of Chinese restaurants on Christmas, and the joy and peace that they bring. And so that morning, as I dreaded going to church to have to preach, it turned out to be one of the most affirming Sundays of my life. As I stood there and I preached and talked about all of these things that tried to strip away Christmas, the words of the sacred scriptures of the Grinch came to my mind. And I said, all of this, it hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or another, it came just the same. And these are the words of wisdom that I want to leave you with, is that Christmas comes whether you want it to come or not, and it comes in its own way. And so all the stress, all the turmoil, all the things that you're afraid of or that's causing you stress, you know what? In the end, it doesn't really matter. What it is, it's about relationship. It's about relationship with others. It's about relationship with God, up and down. And this is where you live. This is where you thrive. So rest assured, rest easily, my friends, because that's what this season is about. It's about preparing. It's about resting. It's about keeping your eyes open for the signs. So don't just sit there like a stump. Take a breath and center your priorities and experience Emmanuel, God with us. Signs are here and now at this very moment. May your soul branches bud with the blessings of abundance, peace, flourishing, and shalom. May this be. Amen.